Hey, DeRacers. So today what we want to do is to bring in a very short, condensed version that's simplified of the importance of linear regression. There's been, fortunately, a lot of new guys entering the space, and they've been asking questions about discovery, what to do, trying to make sense of things. And in the year plus now that we have spent studying horses and trying to figure out where and how to race them, this is one of my favorite researches that we've ever discovered. And it's something that I swear by, and I use it regularly in my stable, and especially as I bring in new foals. All right, so what I want to do, you want to add?
No, I was just going to piggyback on that a little bit while you're loading up the next page here. Linear regression is this idea that something is either decaying over time or just getting smaller. So regressing, right? So we're going to be talking about, in this case, the speed of your horse on an average furlong over distance.
All right, so now every single horse, every single track, there is 3 phases. This is just fact. There is 10 rolls. We call them rolls because every single furlong is broken into 10 individual chance rolls. And the first phase is the first 15 rolls of every single race. Those are the slowest. So I have that showing here, red for slow. And you'll notice from the 2 furlong all the way down to the 15th furlong, they are all just doing the 15 furlong. The middle section of the race is where the horses basically average out. And then the final section is where they get really fast. And the final section is 30% of the total length of the race. You'll notice in the 2 furlong race here, the top row, there is no average section. It is just slow and then the final sprint. And then on the 2nd furlong, there is a small section of average, only 5 rolls, and then 10 rolls of the finals. And what I have on the first section is it's a percentage of the total race that your horse is running the slowest. So 75% of a 2 furlong race is the slowest rolls that you'll see. And then as you work your way down an 8 furlong race, the first 15 are only 18.75%, all the way down to a 15 furlong, it's only 10%. So what does this look like as you go to the right? You're going from top down is 2 to 15. You'll notice that that green section, the fast section, it gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you work your way all the way to the 15 furlongs. And this is why when you take a look at horses' average furlong pace, 100% of every horse does get faster as the race goes longer and longer.
Yeah, and so we see that the slow is that first 15. The average is the middle section of the race. And for those that have seen our other videos, the middle section of a race is almost entirely flat. You don't really have really fast increases or decreases in speed. Now, individual rolls can be faster or slower, but for the average kind of blurred line as you go across the middle section of any race, your horse is maintaining an average pace through that whole thing. So that's why it's yellow here. And then the green at the very end is that last 30%. And I find it really fascinating. You mentioned that 10% makes up the 15 furlongs beginning, right? If you scroll to the right, we've got, I think it's 89 rolls in the middle of this race. And then when we get to the very end, you've got 46, which is another 50% of your mid, which is just an incredible number of rolls that are happening at this fast pace in the final 30% of the race.
All right, so now making sense of this. So I'm going to switch now to the DeRacer analytics tool. This here is my Gen 1 competition horse that I have in here. And what I want to talk about is my discovery methods using linear regression. This competition requires the highest PPR to qualify. So let's take a look at this. If I grab my row 22, so you'll be able to see what is my average furlongs as I move from 2 furlong over. So I have a 12.57, my slowest. I speed up to a 12.46. I speed up to a 12.32. I stay about the same, 12.3296. So that should go down a little bit. And then it goes up. So it slows down. And then it slows down again. So what linear regression models would show me is that on these 2 tracks, on 6 and 7, those most likely are going to start going down if I choose to run them more. You'll notice that I have 28 and 25 runs on them because I was hoping that they would hit on that time. So I started bumping up my dirt values to hope that I would get my quick runs in and I could raise up my dirt. But I just kept digging myself down a hole for the competition. It didn't make sense. So I shifted my energies elsewhere. Now, this is really helpful because when you're trying to figure out where your horses are good, and especially if you're going to be doing range Dirk values, my twos were really low. Initially, I had, I think it was 16 runs in, and my Dirk value, my PPR was probably like around a quarter. So I decided to go all in and just do my 3 Dirkers, and I got multiple first places, a lot of chance there, but I got 18 payouts in Dirk, which then shot my PPR up, and I was able to time it based off of looking at this horizontal linear regression model. I had a feeling that I was due for a good hot streak. It didn't work for me on my 6s, but the timing worked out gloriously for my 2s, and that shoved this horse up into a really good position.
Now, what we're talking about here is we're going to refer to in sometimes referred to as horizontal linear regression, right? Looking left to right here as we go from the 2s to the 15s, they should get faster in average. Another point that we can make is something called vertical linear regression. There's 2 points that we can make on this. The first I want to discuss is the fact that on this particular synth 2 race or average races, it's a 12.57. When we look at turf, it's a 12.66. When we look at dirt, it's a 12.75. Those are not in alignment. And for those that know how this works, dirt uses the most stamina and thus should be the slowest surface. It should then be followed by synthetic, which is a little more of an average amount of stamina consumption. And then turf doesn't really consume much at all. So it should be the fastest. So when we talk about linear regression, there's 2 different ways to look at that, both horizontal and vertical.
Yep. On the vertical, you normally will discover the preference of your horse. Now, this horse is still pretty early in it, but you're absolutely correct. Dirt will eventually, if I run it enough, dirt will be the slowest, synth will be the middle, and then turf will be the fastest. We have noticed there's occasionally an anomaly if a horse has an exceptional dirt preference, but for the most part, I think it's a safe rule of thumb. The vertical will eventually get into alignment if you keep hammering down. So what this tells me is either my synth, the next few synth are going to go slower because it's going to raise up higher than that 12.66 of turf, or when I run my turfs, I'm going to get faster because it's going to show that those are the ones where my natural lane or my natural path or pace is going to level out.
Yeah, and I said there was 2 points. The second point is exactly what you just mentioned, and I'm going to zero in on the particulars here. The 12.57 on synthetic versus the population average furlong of 12.72 is a full 15/100ths faster. That is absolutely bonkers, and that's reflected in the 27% indisputable rate that you've got, which is incredible. If you can maintain anything over 20%, you're doing great. So a 27% is incredible, but we can look at the 12.66, 12.69 comparison in the turf and say that's actually still running a little slow, but you've got a 20% indisputable. Typically on the 2 furlong races, you'll see a separation of about 5/100ths if we're talking about a good horse. You see up in the dirts that it's only a 2/100ths separation, and you've got a 17% indisputable. Again, not a bad run. You're faster than average, but you are not quite creating enough separation to land there. But when I look at the synth and turf, I'm seeing like turf has to come way down. But like you mentioned, it's hard to know if the synth is also going to rise and slow down.
Yes. Now, the importance, I'm going to bring this up, is I'm going to switch it over to a horse that I've been kind of watching and assisting another new player. So this is going to just talk about the importance of data quality and quantity. So when you ask somebody, where should I run my horse? And you hear the veteran say, you haven't run enough, I can't see anything. What they're basically telling you is that your data doesn't make sense. So like if I look at my dirts here on this horse, 13 seconds to 12.6 to 12.57, all of a sudden it drops to 12.22, jumps back up to 5.2, drops back down to 3.2. And it just, there's no steady alignment. It just basically means that by scattershotting random amounts, we have fake data to look at. Yep. And then if we try to do a vertical alignment on those twos, 13 dropping to 12.8, dropping to 12.8, that vertical at least is following the right trend. So that's a good sign that, okay, you're starting to get more data there, but still would be beneficial to get more. And the goal is just to basically find out what surface does your horse like, what pockets do you work within. And if you don't want to blow a ton of dirt, that's why we suggest try to isolate a couple different areas to get a sense of where the data is telling you should run. And then from there, start expanding your discovery, because it's going to be way cheaper to do that than to spend 300, 400 dirt racing everywhere and finding out, hey, there's only like 2 or 3 areas I might even have a chance.
Yeah, and that's key. It's why we preach that you don't have to run, 5, 10, 15, 20 races on every surface to finish your training, right? It's called discovery for a reason, and we are always trying to find ways to figure out how good a horse is faster, right? We don't want to have to run 400 plus races just to find out all 42 tracks how well it can do. So what we typically start with is recommending, like you said, 1 to 2, maybe even 3 columns. We're going to call them, let's say, your 5s and your 10s, right? Or it can be anything. It could be your 4s and your 8s. Pick a couple of them and run the vertical linear regression and run them until they come into alignment. And once you have that, you'll be able to determine, comparative to the population average furlong, whether or not you have a surface preference. And once you know that, now you can go horizontal. And the minute that you go horizontal, everything we just talked about in this video comes into play. You need to start paying attention as you go left or right. Are you getting closer? Are you going up, down? And start to play with that and make sure you understand that as you go to the right, as you are getting into the longer distances, that average should go down.
100% agree. This is where the skill in DeRace comes into fruition. There's a lot of luck and chance about what you're going to roll, and also when you breed or get a new horse, is it good or not? That is the luck portion. But as a manager, I think the skill set is how do you quickly discover and find out whether or not you want to keep the horse, race a horse, sell a horse, burn the horse. Find out what that is. But the faster you could do that, the better chance you have of sustaining your profitability in DeRace.